Hi everyone, Heathany Wave Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new self-titled album from Bryan. Oklahoma singer-songwriter Bryan, who has been one of the biggest and most surprising success stories to come out of the country scene in a while, with tens of millions of monthly listeners across streaming platforms, numerous sold-out arenas. This man is currently one of the largest names in country music today, even besting out a lot of the conventional and pop-centric commercial stuff that typically defines the genre's mainstream. And it's a surprising turn of events, but also not, because with country music getting more and more online, and I have talked about this, it's created more alternative routes for fame. Nashville and the radio waves don't have the chokehold on the genre that they once did. And thank God, because it's led to some artists who have a more rustic and soulful sound getting the spotlight. Be it Sturgill Simpson, be it Tyler Childers, be it one of my personal faves, Chris Stapleton. There's clearly a growing demand for country artists with some damn substance in their music, and these guys represent just the tip of this growing iceberg. Zach as well here didn't get to where he is today by boxing himself in to an industry formula. In fact, even if you go back to his earliest stuff like on Deanne, you'll notice that his style, his vocals, his whole vibe hasn't changed all that much. He may be embracing more layers of instrumentation now, and his voice may be a little weirier a few years down the road, but he's still staying true to organic production, his singing style. In fact, it looks like he's only been looking for ways to mature the seeds of his career that he planted years ago. At least that much was clear on his record that he dropped last year, the 2-hour American Heartbreak, which I very much regret not reviewing. Regardless though, we're in this moment now with this self-titled record, and albums like this are a bit tricky, especially when you are several projects deep already. Why a self-titled record now? Are you saying you've hit upon the real you? Making a record that best represents you, finally? If so, it's kind of interesting that Bryan is doing that with an album that's very much putting forward an indie-friendly aesthetic when it comes to country music at the moment. I mean, Casey Musgraves is on this thing, the Lumineers, but also take into account the twangy rock instrumentation on the first full track of the record, Overtime, which may not be a novel sound, but it hasn't sounded this good in a while, and I think Zach makes it work to his benefit, as it lends a lot of power to his words about family and addiction, wanting to connect with his dad, and working at his passion for music and not giving up. Bryan's songwriting gets elevated once again by a similar instrumental palette on the track East Side of Sorrow, with dramatic and driving drums, a few layers of rhythm guitar too. The lead vocals have a kind of angst on them as well, and the whole thing feels almost like a Bright Eyes song more than it does like a contemporary country track, which is not a complaint, by the way, especially when Zach's storytelling about his younger self is this good. There's also Fear and Fridays, which is a volatile love song that sounds like a country rock hootenanny, complete with some hootin' and hollering in the background. The recording makes the track sound like a kick-ass performance in a country bar. There's some big drums, some steady rhythm guitars, what sounds like maybe a touch of synths too. It's like a little Springsteen or John Mellencamp. Plus the wild chaos in Bryan's vocals and lyrics are infectious. He's just really good at capturing a feeling with his words, whether he's embracing and accepting personal flaws within himself in a relationship on the track Spotless. There's also Ticking, where Bryan expresses pain and anguish over having to cut off things and people that he no longer has space for or has a distance from now in his life. Meanwhile, Holy Roller does a great job at just being this endearing, lovesick little ballad with lines as lovey-dovey as, well, I ain't never been a holy roller, but I found God in your eyes, delivered via some very close and intimate vocal harmonies with Sierra Farrell. There's even better vocal chemistry on the track I Remember Everything with Casey Musgraves, who I mentioned earlier, where you get a very nostalgic and tense back and forth in the lyrics too. And nostalgia, the past, missing people, missing old times. These are pretty prime themes throughout this record. Whether Bryan is singing about a childhood friend that he's lost touch with on El Dorado, there's also the two-parter Jake's Piano in Long Island, where Bryan is reflecting on some old times that he had at a bar with a friend that's now closed. The final moments of this record, though, are a bit spotty for several reasons. There are some tracks where the production and backing instrumentation are a little subpar, and I think these songs suffer as a result. They're smaller acts, which lyrically is a very endearing character portrait of this girl that Bryan is singing about, but the whole thing is presented like this raw acoustic demo, which I just don't see how handing it over in this state is doing the track any benefit, especially since there are other acoustic tracks on the album already that have better recordings and better performances. There's Tourniquet, whose tune and lyrics I don't think are that bad, but the wandering pianos and super saturated guitars just come across as very ill-defined. Plus the instrumental bridge feels a bit off too, which is even more so the case for Tradesman, whose vocals are just too washed out in reverb. And what are the drums even doing here? Just occasionally pounding on the toms to signify like a chord change, but doing it so loosely that it's not really a backbone for the song. One more critique I would like to throw out there is something that Bryan kind of addresses on the track over time, being told he'll never make it and that all of his songs sound the same, which, yes, is reductive, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that there is a bit of sameness across some of these tracks. There's definitely a few chord progressions and tunes that Bryan has kind of favored and rehashed here. I'll say this, Hey Driver, featuring the Warren Treaty, is one of the most excellent songs here, especially with Michael's killer vocal performance on the track. And it's kind of disappointing to hear at least a few other songs on this record that just feel like lesser versions of that track melodically. Like, just cut the redundancy, cut the flab, the record's almost an hour anyway. That being said though, the closing track on this thing is a strong one, with Bryan reflecting on his roots as an Oklahoman, talking about how he can't really escape that past no matter how different he is down the road. There's not a whole lot to it outside of some acoustic guitar and vocals, but he still manages a super dynamic and captivating performance. Overall, I would say this is a very good album, handily one of the best country records you're going to hear this year. The songwriting does lack a little versatility, sure, and I think Bryan's yet to reach his full power level vocally, but he does seem to be improving and maturing with each project, which leaves me with the feeling that this guy is going to be around a while and getting better and better down the road. I'm feeling a light 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Zach Bryan, of Forever.